All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Hello and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And we are here this week to do what we do every week and talk about a scary movie. And we'll get to that in just a second. But Dave and I were having a discussion before we got started. And we do realize that we are fortunate enough that we get to enjoy horror as a side project. It's something that we get to sit back and enjoy. But we are aware of the fact that out there in the world right now and in the Ukraine, there is a very literal war being waged. And, you know, we just want, we are aware of that. And we don't want you to think that we take any of that lightly. We are just kind of here to give you a break from that. If your lives are anything like mine right now, you're constantly ingesting media about this. So we are going to kind of take a break from that and let you just, and honestly, if there was a movie to turn your brain off to, it's the one this week.
This is kind of it.
So, yeah, this is definitely it. But so as you know, as useless as it is and cliche as it is, you know, but our hearts go out to all the people who are having to deal with real life horror. We're fortunate enough that that we get to just talk about it and joke about movie horror.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, if there's a better movie to just turn your brain off to and just sit back and enjoy, we haven't seen one in a little while. This week, we are going to be doing the brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Did this even get a theater release, Dave?
I don't think it did. And also, a student of mine, Frank Kowalski, coming in with, I think, the earliest comment we've ever had. Just
I think so.
Fire. Just fire.
Yeah, just fire. We appreciate you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, this thing, I'm pretty sure just went straight to Netflix.
I think so. So it was. See, here's the thing: like Texas Chainsaw's it's a fucking mess, man. Like the series, the franchise, right? It's an absolute mess. And so, like the previous movie, Leatherface, was one that was released to very little fanfare as well.
I always forget that one even exists.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty good. It's different, but good. And the thing is, I find myself thinking that for just about every Texas Chainsaw. It's like, oh, that was different, good, but different.
Right.
So no, I didn't hear much about this. Netflix didn't really promote it very much.
Yeah.
The fact that so many people were involved in this and it was not promoted was odd. Really odd. Like the story is credited to Fede Alvarez, who's the guy who like very famously did the last Evil Dead movie and Don't Breathe. I mean, that's some fucking pedigree there, you know?
Exactly. And like I remember when like the Halloween resurgence started and I was like, oh yeah, I've heard they're doing that with Texas Chainsaw. I wonder what's ever going on with that. And then all of a sudden I turned on Netflix and it was like, oh yeah, no, it's like
there
out
it is
now. So yeah, you should watch that. But anyway, so we watched the brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre released now in 2022. And even though we haven't done an official episode for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you've ever listened to the show, if you know Dave and I at all, you'd be a fool to think that either one of us didn't like that one. But Dave, just kind of overall, how did you feel about this one? Like, did it surprise you? Did it fall flat? How did you feel about brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
So here's the thing. I have a guilty pleasure for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series because just about everyone loves, if you're into horror, just about everyone loves the original Texas Chainsaw.
Right.
You'll find many people say that it's their favorite horror movie. You'll find many a teacher or a college professor tell you that it is the best horror movie because of all of the subtext that goes in there. You'll find movie critics that say much the same thing because of how much is suggested. People think it's this gory movie, and it really isn't. So much of it is just suggested.
Right.
So like that movie's fucking brilliant, and everything that follows, including the second one, also directed by Tobe Hooper, is just like weird and wacky. So it's a weird series. So I didn't know what to expect. Pretty much from that second one on, they were all gory, like really gory, didn't skimp on the gore, didn't skimp on the humor. Like it kind of just said, let's throw a bunch of shit in a pot and see what comes out, right? We've talked about the great gumbo pot of horror before,
yes,
right? And so I watched it kind of with that like carte blanche feel. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm here for it. And just like every other Texas Chainsaw movie, I was left thinking, what the fuck? And then at the same time thinking, I fucking loved it. So like I wasn't quite sure what I saw. I knew I liked it, but it's so weird. It's so I don't know. It's perfectly Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, that sums it up really well. I texted you, started it a little bit before I did. We both watched it the other night. And so I texted you and I was like, I'm 15 minutes in and I got a bad feeling that this is not going to be good. But you're right. Like I remember watching the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre umpteen years ago and kind of doing the same thing. Like, is this actually like a good scary movie or a good movie? But this movie, I will say, just when you look at this movie, this is a movie that always knew exactly what it was, right? It knew what it wanted to deliver. It knew what it didn't care about. And it delivered very well the things it wanted to. And the things that they didn't care about were just there or not there. And I did the same kind of thing, right? I was like, wait, it ended, and I'm just kind of like staring at the screen, and I was like,
but
oh
what?
My God, did I really like that? Because I think I really liked that.
Right.
And so it was, I honestly, you're right. When it comes to the Texas Chainsaw series, the only way it could have completely fallen flat, I think, is if we would have got some sort of movie that took itself way too seriously, even though the 74 version is, it takes itself pretty seriously. It's not until you get to 2 that it's like,
here's the
wacky.
thing is that Tobe Hooper always said that what he thought he was making was a black comedy. And he says just no one got it.
God bless.
So, and what a fucked up guy,
right?
It was a comedy.
Rob Zombie says the same thing about House of a Thousand Corpses. He's like, I made something funny, right? Don't you guys think it's funny? It's like, did we watch the same movie, Rob?
I've always thought. I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses is like the one oddball in that trilogy because Devil's Rejects has a clear vision. And 3 from Hell has a clear vision. Those two feel cohesive.
Right.
Like one follows the other. Rob Zombie's vision is there. House of a Thousand Corpses feels uniquely Rob Zombie. Like I don't think anyone else could have made that movie. And I really enjoy House of a Thousand Corpses. But it feels like his like sadistic, which to call it sadistic for him is like his sadistic take on Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
And it's twisted, it's weird, and the supernatural gets thrown in there for like a split second. You're like, what the fuck? And that's it. It's just one scene. You're like, oh, okay, I guess there's like fucking mud monsters. Okay, and then you keep going.
Yeah.
And
so, but yeah, like I said, it was just when it was over, I did the same thing. I was like, I'm not like, it's only 80 minutes long, by the
Yeah.
way. It's like right at 80 minutes long. And so it doesn't take long to get through it. And then you're just kind of sitting there and you're like, whoa, what? I don't, yeah, like, and then I texted you and you're like, we've got 48 hours. Like, we'll
sleep
think it
on it.
through. Yeah. So you know what though?
Hopefully
Like when
not
it's
think
all,
too hard. I think when you
yeah,
think too hard
exactly.
about Texas Chainsaw, it starts to lose some of its luster.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm in the same boat, man. I liked it. I liked it. It was weird. It definitely had some flaws, and we'll get to those as we go. But I mean, it was what I expected it to be. And yeah, like I said at the top, man, you turn your brain off, just watch this. Not like not look for, like as a fan of Texas Chainsaw, yeah, you're gonna look for subtext and things like that. But if you're watching this and you haven't watched it yet, don't watch for too much subtext. Just watch this one. Just watch this one.
I think that's the best way to do it. So we touched upon this briefly. Like there's been almost 50 years between this and the original Texas Chainsaw, and this is a movie that goes back to this like really popular thing in the last decade or so, the idea of a requel, right?
Yes.
So it's rebooting the franchise, but it's also a direct sequel to a hand selected number of films, in this case just the original, right? So when it comes to something that is honoring the original, right, by picking up where it leaves off, and kind of saying, I'm trying, I guess, to stick more closely to the legacy of the original film, right? Which is, as we said, very often on the very top of all the lists of greatest horror movies of all time, right? I mean, one can argue, and it has been argued, that it is the very first slasher. Right. Sally Hardesty is often called the very first final girl. The trope begins with her, so is this a movie that I think you put it beautifully? Did it understand the assignment?
Yeah.
Did it understand the assignment of picking up that legacy and carrying it? Did it build upon or disregard that legacy? Is the spirit of Tobe Hooper present here? And I think that that's one of the best litmus tests for a Texas Chainsaw movie. Like, could you see his DNA somewhere in there?
I think that if Tobe Hooper could watch this movie, I think that he would be happy with it. I think that he would have a couple of complaints here and there, but I do feel like there is a lot of Tobe Hooper alive in this. This movie, it takes just this. I mean, it does the great at the beginning. It opens with, by the way, it was David John Larroquette, not David Arquette, John Larroquette, doing a voiceover. Unlike it's like, all right, hey, real quick, here's what happened in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's factual in this universe. All right, cool. I'm good now. Let's go. It does a really good job of building on that while creating its own thing. They established that there was this guy, Leatherface, and then but then you kind of get to watch him he's born again. By the time we meet who is obviously Leatherface when you see him for the first time, right? It's a hulk of a man that they won't show his face. You're 100% sure that that's Leatherface.
You actually do see his face once.
Yes.
The very first time that you see him, it's like a shadow of a man. He's sitting in a chair.
I rewound to make sure that I wasn't seeing things.
Yeah, because he's there. It's a flash. And then, it cuts to some other thing, and then it goes back to that same shot, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man, shit's already getting fucking wrecked.
And so, so you get to see him reborn when his mother dies. Because of the actions of these teenagers that we'll get to when we eventually try to discuss this story. Teenagers is the wrong word. They're obviously in their 20s.
They're older,
but these young adults. And so when she dies, he loses his mind, or it loses it again, loses what's left of it, whatever, and then he becomes Leatherface, and then it's like, all right, by the way,
Or does he
remember,
find his mind?
Good point. And so then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Remember, this is a Texas Chainsaw. Frank Kowalski, yes, these millennials as they were in the movie. And then from that moment on, it's like, oh yeah, remember guys, this is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And then they stomp the gas pedal, and it is relentless. I think that that's where Tobe Hooper would be proud of this. I do think that I don't think that it destroys the legacy. I think that one bit of the original that's lost in this, which is something that's bizarre to say about a movie named Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there is a good amount of subtlety and nuance in the storytelling in that movie and the ones that come after it. And I do feel that was completely lost in this. I feel like the couple of times they maybe started at something, they're like, nah, fuck it. Let's just kill more people.
Yeah. And I think we'll get to that when it comes to talking about the story in earnest. But I do think one of the things that to me makes the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre so unique, maybe not unique, because there are others in the genre that use this to great effect, is the movie feels gritty. It feels like a grindhouse movie. And this movie, probably by the simple fact that it was filmed on modern digital cameras, it looks polished.
Yeah, it feels slick.
It feels very slick, and that's normally not a bad thing. And it certainly doesn't hurt the movie. But that is one thing where I felt like, you know what? To me, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is gritty. It's dirty. It's everything you remember that original movie to be. Like, if you asked me to describe the original Texas Chainsaw to you, the first word that I would say is grit. That's probably the first word that comes to mind anytime I think of that movie. The film stock even looks gritty, So that was one thing that I thought was lost. When we're talking about legacy, there's two other things that were handled, I think, in an interesting way. I don't know that it's necessarily negatives, but I believe every Texas Chainsaw Massacre has had a dinner table scene.
Right.
It's like one of the immovable objects of the Texas Chainsaw series, and there was no dinner table scene here. Now, you can make the argument that it's because his family is ripped from him so early in the movie, and therefore what we get is the most brutal Leatherface we've seen so far.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily think that this was missing the family aspect that the other Texas Chainsaw movies were missing, because family plays a huge role in all the movies, right? The Sawyer family is front and center, always. But this handles family somewhat differently. And I was okay with that, but it was kind of weird not to have that dinner table scene. The last thing about the legacy that I'll say is I don't know that I personally liked how they handled Sally Hardesty. I feel I feel like she was built up to be somewhat of a Laurie Strode, like what we see in the new Halloween movies, or a Sarah Connor from the Terminator series. And when she first stumbles upon the defaced orphanage owner, I'm like, oh fuck, shit's about to get real serious. And it did for a second, and then done. To me, it felt very similar to like what you were talking about with many aspects of the story, where it was like, oh cool, let's introduce this and then move on, right? I felt like Sally was handled much the same way. And when you have literally the first final girl ever in cinema history, I feel like she needs to be given a little bit more care and attention given to how she's handled. That was one of the only things that I'd say, like, you know, for me personally, I didn't enjoy, because I thought it went against the legacy of the original movie. But there were other characters that took up that handle, you know, the mantle of Sally Hardesty in a great way. So in every other aspect, I think Tobe Hooper would be proud that someone made a movie like this, because it, I think, honors much of what he was trying to do with the original and trying to say something, but also honors much of what makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 so amazing, which is it's absolutely like bonkers 80s aesthetic. You know, the like, what are we doing? I don't know. More cocaine and then just film it. You know, like that's to me, that's what Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is. You know, it's just cocaine fueled writing and filmmaking at its finest. You know, it is the Commando of horror movies.
Right. And so this is the second time in a couple months that we've approached one of these requels. We did it with Candyman a little bit ago. And this is definitely a trend that we're seeing more. You know, the Halloween franchise is getting a whole new trilogy that's supposed to, you know, complete that original story. And the thing I want to ask you, I mean, and you personally, like, not even like, aside from looking at the whole requel trend, does it bother you to do that with this particular franchise because of the fact that I know how much you love those Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, especially 2? Like, I know that Frank Kowalski, the new one is vape pens and Instagram Live. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. But so I know how much you love. From doing Geek More, I've heard you talk about, you know, your love for Texas. So does now making a sequel that is supposed to be like direct to the first one, does that affect for you at all? Like, when you're looking at the legacy of it, do you feel like it kind of waters down what made those other ones great after the original?
So here's the thing is, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series has never really concerned itself too much with continuity.
True.
The second one is a direct sequel to the first one, and it picks up, you know, about 10 years later, and much of the family's still alive. Like Drayton's still alive. Nubbins is dead, and he's still sitting at the table. You know, so like that's great. You know, they introduce other family members like Chrome Top, you know, who's like just fucking incredible. You know, Bill like, Moseley, cast him at everything and let him play all the roles.
Chrome Top is like the reason to have sequels to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like he is like head and shoulders above any other. It's like they didn't even have an whole idea for a movie. Like, we got this one new character, we need a vehicle.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. So like, but once you get to Leatherface, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, the first Leatherface, right?
Yeah.
There's very little continuity between Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and that one. So it's like, you know, how did he get here? Who is this family?
Right.
Because there seems to be some sort of disconnect. How much time has passed? We don't know, right? Like, is this progressing chronologically, like with the same amount of time that is passing in between the films? I don't know. And that one takes itself a little bit more seriously, kind of goes back to the original. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, A New Generation, is possibly the biggest train wreck of a movie you'll ever watch. For those of you who are unaware, Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger filmed this movie before they became Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, and then went on to do great, amazing things. And I believe it was Warner Brothers who had the contract at the time, whoever it was that had the rights, said, well, fuck, we've got this thing shelved. We thought it was like unreleasable. Let's fucking release it now. And it is just like Matthew McConaughey is bionic. He literally has like steampunk powered limbs in this movie. It's the weirdest fucking thing, and it manages to work. There's a government conspiracy, like the government is funding the Sawyer family. It's so fucking weird and wacky. It makes no sense. And how these people are related to the Sawyers, we don't know. To the original Sawyers, we have no idea. And it's not explained, and you don't fucking care, right? A number of years go by, and then we get the reboot.
Right.
With
Jessica Biel?
Right, with Jessica Biel. And then we got a prequel to that, right? This is where Lee Ermey is in it, and you know, it's these are good, right? It kind of goes back to like the really gritty feeling original. And then there was another reboot, Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Yes.
And
available on Netflix right now, by the way.
Yeah. With Alexandra Daddario. And Jeff from Geekmore is a real big fan of that one for that reason. And then there was not much for a little while, and then Leatherface is released. And again, it's another requel. It's actually a prequel to the original. So this whole thing is a mess. So for me, as far as continuity goes, it doesn't really matter that it erases this movie or that movie, because I realized a long time ago I cannot attempt to make a like Star Wars style canon out of this. Like you can fit all the pieces of Star Wars together, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll watch this movie this time and this movie here, and then I'll watch this TV show down here. You can do the same thing with the MCU, right?
Yes.
You cannot do that with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or you will drive yourself insane.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I agree completely.
So I simply approach this as, is the story passable? And there's a couple different things that they do, which I think are really interesting in introducing ideas that make the characters much more interesting. But the follow through's not there.
Yeah. I think that Halloween coming before this one and doing what it did, and opening up that discussion about how convoluted the continuity is. Like, you know, anybody who listens to this podcast has seen one of those diagrams. It's like, here's how the Halloween timelines work. And so, you know, like, and now you have beautifully crafted, you know, the same thing for this. I think that Halloween coming first, which, you know, oddly enough, is a movie that I guess maybe just because it came out later, it's a movie I think that has more weight to the general populace, maybe because it didn't go away to the extent that Texas Chainsaw Massacre did.
The sequels were more frequent.
Yeah. And so I think that one coming first and kind of setting in everybody's heads that like this is a thing that you can do even when, yes, you have a spider web of continuity that doesn't work. I think that helps out a lot, but I kind of did the same thing. I was like, you know what? Just give me a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. You want to tie it into the first one? That's fine. You know, it's so the other question is, do you hope this is a trend that people kind of keep dipping their toes in? Like, I remember the first time I remember thinking that this was a big deal was when Brandon Routh and Superman Returns came out. And then they were like, okay, everything after what? That was like everything after 3, right? It was like everything after Superman 3.
Two was the last one that it considered canon.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and so 3 and 4 were no longer
there
canon.
We go. And so I remember thinking it was weird, like at the time then Halloween came out and I was like, this is perfect for that.
And they started it with H2O. They ignored 4, 5, and 6.
And then the new ones came out and they ignored H2O and Rob Zombie and all of that. So it's a mess. But is this something that you hope that somebody goes out and finds another franchise that eventually became a mess and kind of does this with. I'm not asking you to name one. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but do you think that this is a type of thing that's rife to continue?
I truthfully don't care. For
Fair enough.
For me, the most important thing is for the movie to be good, you know. As long as you can create a good story, I say use what you want, don't use what you don't want, and kind of leave it up to the fans, right? Because we're living in an age where you don't have to go to a Blockbuster and hope that they have the whole series to be able to binge it. Right. You could just log on to Netflix or Hulu, or in the case of horror, Shudder, right? And just watch it all there, right? Plus, with the internet at your fingertips, like you literally have all the information ever. And those that are casual fans or casual moviegoers are not going to care about the continuity. They never have, and they never will, because all they want is to go see horror. Right.
Yeah.
They're just they want to go. They want to be scared. They want to have a good time. And then they want to go to like a Sonic or something and get a milkshake and some French fries after.
That's why we got 9 Saw films.
Exactly. Right. And how many Fast and Furious movies?
Hey,
right?
Whoa. Hey, watch stuff now. But you're right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's why I watch the Fast and Furious movies. You're absolutely right. They're entertaining.
Does the story of one affect the other? No, it's because it's entertaining, right? James Bond is the same way, and I love James Bond, right? So for the person who does care about continuity, they know enough about the continuity to say, oh, okay, so this is just ignoring this movie.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a good point.
You know, so I think, like, if, for example, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, these have been dormant for a while now. If they wanted to pick up and start doing something, and I know that eventually something will happen with Friday the 13th as soon as the lawsuit is taken care of. Fingers crossed. Hopefully that happens soon. I know it's probably not going to happen, but that is my favorite horror franchise. So hopefully it'll happen soon. If they wanted to just do something new to Friday the 13th, whether they wanted to make it a requel or a reboot or a sequel to the last one that they did, I don't really care. What I do care about is that it delivers.
Right. So when you're looking at the idea of it delivering and it's going to be a good movie, you got to look at that one thread that ties all the kills together, and that's the story. And when you're looking at this story in this movie, I mean, come on, right? It's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. You know, you try not to expect too much, but we did get a story. So the question here is, you know, was it any good? Did it serve its purpose, or, you know, just like did it make any sense even?
So I think the broader story makes sense. And I really like I think it makes enough sense.
Okay, there we go.
And maybe I should say that. I think it makes enough sense. That it's a logical story, absolutely not. Some of the decisions that were made on the narrative front kind of left me scratching my head, like, how, why, who would do this? But ultimately, I really didn't care, right? Because what I want to do is I want to see Leatherface wreck people for an hour and a half, which is what we got, right? So I think what was really interesting was the social commentary that was in the movie. I think was really good.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most of that social commentary was left untapped. Where I think Tobe Hooper with his original like struck fucking gold in really exploring the horrors of Vietnam right? And that the Vietnam era fear of even just going to Nam, and that was really the only thing that he went into, right? I mean, he went into a little bit about what the economy does to rural small town people, but really it's about Vietnam, right? And you can make arguments that it's about other things, but my personal opinion, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about Nam.
Right.
So this movie, I think, tries to do so much. It tries to be commentary on gentrification. It tries to be commentary on school shootings. It tries to be commentary on the relations between urban and rural America, and begins to make a lot of sense and then abandons the story to move on to something else.
Yes.
And I think that this is something that we talked about with Candyman. If the movie had been about 10 or 15 minutes longer, I think they could have explored some of those storylines a little more, and it would have made a lot more sense. However, all of that would have detracted from the fucking gore, which is what we're here for, right? So you're kind of left at this like impasse where do you explore the story more and make it more interesting, or do you leave out more story? Do you leave more story on the cutting room floor, and focus more on the gore? So it's kind of like this like weird place, and I think that they left it at a place where we understand that characters are going through certain things, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we have enough motivation from the characters to understand why they make the decisions that they make, even if those decisions don't seem fully thought out because we don't have all the story. I feel like this is probably one where there was a hour and 40-minute cut, or maybe there was a 2-hour cut of this movie that was largely left on the cutting room floor in favor of one that focused more on the action and on the horror, and it really did deliver in that aspect.
Yeah, I think you're right. You get these bits, right? It's like, oh, she's a school shooting survivor and she's got to deal with that trauma, and it's kind of there,
which I had not seen done in a horror movie before.
Yes. You get this little bit of like, oh, well, Leatherface goes crazy again because his, mother, whether it be his real mother or just because he was in this orphanage, or, I guess, if it's the original, then it's just because he's in this orphanage. But, like he goes crazy because they killed her. And then so you kind of want to draw this line to like, well, they killed her because this incessant need to gentrify her town. But then you look at what actually happened, you're like, well, actually she kind of died because Dante just approached the thing like a massive dick.
Right.
It wasn't just because they were gentrifying this town. It's because Dante just immediately was an asshole. Right. And
right.
So
he did not respect the history of the town, which of course they do this in such a tricky way because the history of the town is Confederate history.
Yes,
right.
And
so
yes.
Again, this is like one of these things that it's really interesting because it's a thought here where it's like, okay, if you ever hear someone defend a statue of a Confederate general or the hanging of a Confederate flag, it is always, well, this is part of our history, right? That's always the argument, right? And that's a difficult argument to like rebut.
Yes.
Because you don't want to tell someone that your history is invalid, right? As terrible as that history might be, right? Like, you stood for fucking slavery. You started your own country, which lasted for 5 years over slavery, right? Like, you're definitely on the losing side of history here, but it is your history,
Right. And so he's, and yeah, I do. I called him a dick and an asshole, but you're right. He's put in a difficult situation where he's blindsided by this woman being in where, like I said, which one of the story elements, apparently a bunch of rich yuppies bought an entire town in Texas to like turn it into some cooking utopia, because the only like explanation we have for where any of his money comes from is that he has an Instagram channel where he cooks. Like this
Nothing is explained there.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. There's just there's so much here. There was one moment where I got really excited about them kind of exploring some of the weird subtleties of the original, where Leatherface sits down with one of his mother's dresses and starts smearing her makeup on the face. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, they're not going to shy away from like that weird like element of it. And then it was just kind of gone. And it was like, okay, so maybe that was just more of lip service for the fans of the original.
That aspect of Leatherface as mother,
right,
is something that's only explored in 1, in 4, which is again a fucking train wreck, right? But like he's in full on glam makeup in that
yes
one, right? And then in this one, right? So it's like, oh fuck, finally we can explore this some more. No, sorry, we're moving on.
No, it's there. And so that kept happening with the story. But when you look at one of the things that we always go back to is, did it serve its purpose? Yeah. It got all these yuppies into the town where Leatherface lives. It gave Leatherface a reason to be upset and kill them. And it gave us a reason to get from cars at a gas station in middle of nowhere, Texas, to car driving away from a small town in Texas where everyone but one person has been murdered.
Which, right. Again, talk about legacy. I mean, that is exactly how the legacy of Texas Chainsaw Massacre begins.
Yeah. And so they gave us just enough story to rebuild that. There's this whole thing where, you meet Richter and they automatic, they jump to judgments about him because he's got a gun on his hip, but he's got a reason. And then I love that Richter gives the line. He's just like, I'm a Texan and I don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And I heard him say that and I was like, this may be a fictional movie, but that might be the most non-fictional thing ever said out loud in a horror movie. And so just some stuff like that, which, by the way, also the character of Richter, his real name is Mo Dunford. And not that he did a bad job in this movie, but I wonder if they were looking at like a casting sheet, like people are showing up and it's like, fuck it, send everybody home. This guy's name is Mo Dunford. He gets this role. His name is Mo Dunford. He gets it, right?
I feel like there was not much acting going on there. Like he walked in
with that gun on his hip.
With that gun on his hip, with his boots all muddy, and they were like, I don't know what it is, but you have it.
Exactly.
I personally think he was the most interesting character in the movie.
Yeah, I thought he was great.
And so fucking badass when you get a sledgehammer thrown at your leg, right? And your calf breaks in fucking half, and you still rush it at Leatherface and manage to smash his head into a window. You're a fucking badass, and you belong in the annals of horror history.
I also like had the realization while watching this movie that I handle like a closed fracture, really freakish looking break a lot worse than I handle someone literally getting decapitated with a chainsaw. Maybe because there's a guttural feel to like watching a leg get broken, but still see them alive. It's like, well, if I got my head cut off, I wouldn't know what that felt like. I'd be dead. But it's like, I can imagine taking a chain. Yeah. I can imagine taking a chainsaw to the leg, but like I said,
I personally have a fear of not extreme heights. Like I'm not afraid of falling out of an airplane. Right. If I fall out of an airplane, I'm dead before I hit the ground. Right. I'm afraid of moderate heights that would leave me in a debilitating position for the rest of my life. Like the second story of a mall, right? That's about 20 feet or 30 feet high,
Right.
But like if you fell, you'd never walk again.
Right. Like you're going to make it, but your life is forever changed for the worse type thing.
That's the thing that really fucks with me. I can't do that. You know, if I fell off the roof of a single story house, I'd be okay. That not so scary. Roof of a second story house. Yes, because I'll probably survive. And I don't want to survive that. Just fucking kill me. You know, either I want to be dead or I want to be okay, but it's that area in between, right? So like those breaks, like when he oh my, we're gonna get to the gore later.
We're gonna get to that, but just you know, it was one thing. So there was one amazing moment in the story here that goes back to an ages old trope of if you see a gun in Act 1, it has to be used in Act 3. Mm-hmm. And so you see the AR-15. You know, when she first meets Richter, and it's like, okay, that's going to play a role. Then it shows back up in Act 3 and she pulls the trigger and nothing happens. And God damn it, that was such a genius moment. That was so cool. Like, I loved it so
continuity wise, like it made perfect sense. Yes. Because she asks him, is that loaded? And he unloads the gun for her.
Yes, and make sure even the chamber is empty. Yeah.
Yeah, so she picks this thing up and she thinks she's good to go. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
It was such a great moment.
It really was. And it took that idea and it made it into this great horror movie thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was, you know, like I said, there's nothing stellar to say about the story here, except for the fact that you're right. They left a lot of opportunities for stuff on the table, but would it have taken away from what we got? Man, you make this movie much longer and you stop clumping together these kills the way they were. And maybe you're the ride, you know, like you've been on a roller coaster and you hit that section like towards the last 2/3 where you just have those just little hills
up and down.
Yeah, and you're just disappointed until you can get to the one last time a chain takes you up. Yeah, they got rid of those little hills. They just took us big hill, big hill, big hill. Here's the chain that takes you up to the climax. You're good to go. So I'm not upset about it. But yeah, there's nothing, you know, award winning about the story to be found here.
Right. I think that's the best way to describe it. What is award winning, however, is the brutality, the violence in this movie. I think I'm rarely surprised by violence in movies. And this one did surprise me. I was like, wow. They in Spinal Tap terms, this one goes to 11. You know, this was well, why don't you tell me how does Leatherface interact with people in this movie? How does that make this movie something that is fun to watch, right? And how does that lack of story make the gore, the kills either stand out more or less? Were you surprised?
So we have done a couple episodes in recently in the past few months where we kept saying they were so close to showing me something great, right? Like my Bloody Valentine. I was like, they were so close. There was so much there. Candyman, so many great faraway shots for what could have been awesome kills. It was like the people who made this movie heard the people like us talking, and they were like, "Oh, okay, like we got you." The gore on this movie so masterfully towed that line where it never crossed into the genre of torture porn. Eli Roth, I love you, but Hostel is rough. You know,
it's not fun.
Right, it's not fun.
It's not fun anymore at that point.
And that's exactly where this stayed. This hit that beautiful, beautiful sweet spot in delivering insane amounts of gore, insanely creative and fun to watch kills, and kept it fun the entire time. Like, as this movie went on, I was like, man, I'm not going to have a lot of notes. And then the killing started, and I was like, I'm just going to keep taking notes about all of the awesome ways people are getting killed in this movie. So from the moment that Leatherface loses his mind, we immediately realize he ain't got time for the bullshit, right? He's done with the world. He has lost his entire family and now his adopted family. There's nothing left for Leatherface except for to kill anyone that he deems associated with the death of this woman from the beginning. And so we immediately get him cutting his mom's face off, killing a guy with an oxygen tank, stabbing a girl in the gut with a broken piece of window, and slowly cutting her open, right? And it's just insane.
Don't forget that guy that he kills with the oxygen mask. What finally does that guy in is he uses his completely broken off wrist to jam into his jugular.
Yes.
And he fucking bleeds to death. It was so fucking brutal. Mr. Kowalski coming in clutch with every comment here. Redneck John Wick. I agree.
Without
Redneck
a
John Wick.
doubt. Anything put into the hands of Leatherface in this movie, most notably a chainsaw, but anything became a weapon. Yeah, your own wrist, shard of glass, oxygen tank. The man did it all, right? And while some of them were kind of like, oh, made you cringe, or like not cringe, but like seize up, they were all just fun as fuck to watch, right? And I know that we're twisted individuals, and that's
why we're here.
But that's why we're here, and that's what we were looking for, right? We were looking for fun ways, and then the very first time they give you a boring kill where he just like slashes a guy with a butcher knife, and it's kind of boring. Then they go on to sell it by having that guy walk around with his face cut open so that you can
and the prosthetics were fantastic.
Savor. Yes. And you can really savor how, yes, it was like a shot through a swinging door to see him get his face cut open. But hey, don't worry. We're going to show it to you and you're going to enjoy it.
But that was also a really well choreographed shot. The way the door is swinging open and you keep seeing Leatherface and Dante going at it in the kitchen. Like Dante tries to run out the door and Leatherface actually is in a shot very reminiscent of My Bloody Valentine. Like he just reaches out and grabs him and pulls him right back into the kitchen. And he's like, nah, man, you're not fucking escaping me. I got you.
And so, I mean, they just, so many, like at one point he makes it onto the bus full of these yuppies that have bought the town. And in that moment, okay, like now it goes down, right? And so you're just wondering how high they're going to keep cranking this up. And my favorite moment is at one point he stabs through a guy who's like, taking the chainsaw and screaming and all of that. Yeah. And there's a woman cowering while she gets covered by his blood. So he just keeps pushing until he skewers them both simultaneously. Fucking genius.
Chainsaw sex. Yes. That's what happened there. It was chainsaw sex.
Yes.
And it was sexy and gory and beautiful and awful and everything you wanted it to be.
I mean, there was no lack of creativity here. There was no lack of brutality. I'm sure you've got some you want to go over too. But one thing I've got to say about the kills and just about Leatherface in general, for a chainsaw that was trapped in a wall for however many years, that thing came out sharp as hell.
Yeah.
I've seen a chainsaw. I'll throw this out there. I've never actually used a chainsaw. They terrify me.
It is terrifying. I've used it before. It is scary.
I've seen a chainsaw used, and I've never seen one go through literally anything like a hot knife through butter. At one point, he sticks it down into the floorboards of this home and just starts effortlessly. I mean, he's a strong guy, so effortlessly for him, but still just effortlessly pulling it through the floorboards. He's cutting through floor joists. He goes through a damn pipe at one point with this chainsaw. And what's amazing about this movie is you never go, man, that's stupid. You go, oh, fuck yeah, Leatherface got the best chainsaw in the damn world. Like
I was really glad that because I was half expecting for Leatherface to take that chainsaw from behind the wall and start it up on the first rip of the cord.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that, and they actually made that the way I thought of it, and go with me here, it reminded me of Jaws, where when you would hear that 2-note musical cue, the
oh yeah, okay,
you knew Jaws was nearby, right? And that's what that was. You would hear like the chainsaw would power down, and then from somewhere in the distance you'd hear the and you're like, fuck, I'm about to die, aren't I? And I'm like, oh shit, how many more pulls of that cord is it gonna take before he just cuts my dick off, right? and that's to me, that was part of what made the action so good, so tense, is that and the music was used to great effect too, because they would use these really stinging string sounds, like the cello would just like, and it would sound almost like a chainsaw, the way that they would do it. I don't know who it is that composed the music here, but it was done really, really well, done to really great effect here. And I think that was almost like a calling card for him. It was a musical cue using the chainsaw that way. As great as that was, when he would throw things at people and like just mangle limbs, to me that's what really got me here, and we don't see too much of that in some of the other Texas Chainsaw movies. One of my favorite scenes in the original is when he takes a mallet from the kitchen, because it's what he's holding. He was in the kitchen, right, and he just bangs the guy on the head, and he falls on the floor like a sack of potatoes, and like he goes into shock, and his body just starts to twitch. Like, to me, that was like one of the more realistic things that happened in that movie, and I'm like, fuck, that's terrifying. And then he just grabs him and pulls him into the kitchen and closes that door. And it's like, that's fucking terrifying, right? When he throws, and I mentioned this already, when he throws that fucking sledgehammer at Richter's leg, and the leg, which was previously straight, just goes boom, and buckles. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
That one, when he throws the chainsaw at I can't remember her name, but the girl who survived the school shooting, when he throws it at her leg and it just kind of nicks the back of her, like, and nicks her Achilles heel, like, that was a moment where I was like, oh fuck, like there were so many moments like that. But to me, the standout moment, and I gotta say, like, I would probably put this in, if this were a Mount Geekmore episode, I would put it on my mountain of horror movie scenes, moments. I mean, I don't know, man. It was so good. The bus, everything that happens on that yuppie party bus is just, it is chef's kiss. I mean, that to me is what Darth Vader's hallway scene was in Rogue One.
There it is.
And you even, like, the way Vader like pierces some guy up to the top with his lightsaber, Leatherface does the same thing with the chainsaw. He goes right up, pulls this guy right up into the ceiling of this. Oh man, it was so good. I had to rewind and watch it over again. And with I don't know if she was a promoter or someone from the bank.
I think she was a banker. If you're talking,
she was
about
the
what
banker,
I think
right?
about.
Yeah, she's about to escape. She's getting out, and half her torso's out, and then he just slices her right in half, so she falls right on the floor. It was amazing, and the way that the blood just starts to pool into the bathroom where the sisters are hiding, like, that is terrifying. You're just hearing these cries, these screams. There's chainsaw sex going on outside. That is a masterpiece of horror filmmaking right there. It was so tense and it was so good. And I was thinking, how the fuck is anyone going to escape this?
Right.
And of course they managed to, and they do it because of the stupid corkscrew that they make fun of her for buying at the beginning of the movie. You know, and that's one of the things that I did like about this a lot, is every single little plot device was used to great effect. They may have started storylines that they didn't quite flesh out, but every plot device was used so greatly.
And what's amazing about that bus scene is, you know, when you watch a horror movie and you're watching people get killed, you know, you're usually just like, what's coming next? But when he steps onto the bus and the one guy holds his phone up and there's all the Instagram lives going off and stuff, and he goes, try anything and you're canceled, bro. It's like, oh yeah, kill all these folks. Kill them all. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Round them up. You're done. I'm okay with him killing you now. I don't care that you didn't actually kill his mother. You all deserve this now. And I'm okay with this. Like, it was such a,
and the comments that were coming in were so good. Like, oh, that's totally fake.
Yes, yeah, that was a good effect, right? To like then see the Instagram live, but then they would also like, you know, he's just swinging this thing around wildly, and he's occasionally just kind of barely taking off a limb. You'd get these scenes of like people like cowering, just holding a stump of their arm and he's eventually going to get back to him, you know that, but he's moved on now, and so it was like the vampire rave scene in Blade 2.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
But with a chainsaw. It was so incredible. And to just take all of this and do it in such a confined space where you knew that, like, even watching it, you felt like you were right on top of the chainsaw. Because they did such a good job of making that scene so claustrophobic and so wild that it was yes, in the annals of slasher movie history. Like, that scene, I mean, it deserves amazing praise. Like, you can stack that scene up against some of the best, you know, mass killings in any movie like that. You know, what is it in second or third Nightmare on Elm Street, or maybe it's Friday the 13th, where he storms like a party like on a farm and just like takes out like a ton of people. It's like you can stack it up against any of those things, and it works.
The church scene in the church, in Kingsman. To me, that same sort of like frenetic feel. There's one part, and the thing is, like, I'm wincing and laughing at the same time, because it manages to give you the violence without being too heavy. And you mentioned the Instagram live. There's another scene where, like, it reminded me almost of like a butcher, where he's like, okay, here's that one piece of meat. He's obviously been like slicing people up, right? And then he just lifts out of, I don't know where he got it, but he lifts this arm and he just kind of like throws it behind himself, and he's like, okay, that's gonna go over there. I'm gonna save that for later. I'm going to you now.
Yeah.
And it was so perfect the way that that little like head cock that he did, which is, you know, people often associate that with Michael Myers, right? And, you know, for obvious reasons, you know, he does the head cock all the way back from the beginning, but it was used in a different way here. It wasn't funny, or rather it was funny. It wasn't like a soulless creature here. It's like, no, there is a soul to Leatherface. His soul wants to eat you, but it's oh god, I fucking love this scene.
And what's incredible is all of these kills stacking up. He can slice through anything with this chainsaw. There was no lack of evidence for the fact that Leatherface is a remarkably strong human being, for, you know, especially for as old as he was, but a man in the prime of his life.
Yeah,
he was a remarkably strong
in his
human being.
70s at this point.
Like, okay, I went and saw the Batman last night. And the Batman, two thumbs up. But he's wearing full body armor, okay? And he still occasionally takes a couple blasts that put him on his ass. We see Leatherface taking shots and just doing all this and very rarely taking any damage. We're very aware of the fact that he's a very strong human being. But there was a moment where we were given this much insight into how smart he can be. And it was such a beautiful, whether or not it was a direct, like homage to Jurassic Park, but he clever girled Lila.
He did.
He took the chainsaw, revs it, and puts it in front of a cutout of a bear that she can't really see because it's behind some vapor lock. So she hears the chainsaw and sees this hulking silhouette and is convinced that's where he is. And he's not. And he completely outsmarted her. And I was like,
and her response is so good.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. And it was exactly the guy from Jurassic Park when he realized he got outsmarted by a velociraptor, clever girl. It was in that one moment. It's like, you're right. He's not just a soulless killing machine like a Michael Myers. This is a man who's calculating. This is a man who knows what he needs to do to kill you and survive, and he's going to do it.
Survival is the thing that is most consistent with Leatherface. He's been played in various different ways, but survival is that one that is like the through line. Starting with Gunnar Hansen back in 1974, he has said that he played him as someone who had been stunted at 10 years old. And just had the body of this like incredible specimen of a human. And we see that. I mean, he is abused by his family. We see it in the first one. We see it in every single other one. He is used, abused, and his use of violence is a crutch for survival.
And so, the one other thing of how kills were used so perfectly in this movie was back when we did Scream, we talked about Jamie Kennedy and the rules and all that, he goes, hey, hold on, here's the moment where you think the killer's dead, but he comes back for one more. And they gave us that to perfection. It was so well done. The girls are in the car. The sun's up, right? That's your horror movie cliche for you've survived.
Yeah.
The sun's up. A new day is breaking and you're still alive. And they're driving away in their auto driving car. And the window shatters. He pulls Melody, right? Was her name? Pulls Melody out of the car. No muss, no fuss. Boom. Head off with the chainsaw. And then we get the amazing final girl scene of the self-driving car driving Lila away while she's screaming after watching her sister be decapitated. And then we get the moment from the end of the original where he's just swinging it wildly because there's the one that got away and he didn't want that. And that, even if the whole movie had just been meh until then, like, I might have given it a full another star just for that last little bit, right? Because that was so perfect. Like, that was the quintessential perfect use of violence, gore, and a kill in a slasher movie.
Man, I can't say enough about how amazing it was shot. The violence, the gore. I'm with you, man. I'm with you every step of the way here.
So as we sit here and we rave about how amazing the gore is and whether or not we've liked the movie, we've come to that point in the show where it's time for us to rate it. Now, if you're new to Shiver, or if you're not, then this, probably not news to you. But if you're new to Shiver, then let us let you know that we rate every movie only against itself. We spent a lot of time talking about the legacy of this, but we're not stacking this up against the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're just looking at this. And so in effort to rate a movie just in it by its own merit, we create a unique rating system for each movie. And this time around, we always kick back and forth our ideas. And immediately there was one that we have both thought of. And so out of a possible 5 yuppie party buses, yuppie party bus massacres even, what do you give this new Texas Chainsaw?
Man, so I finished this movie and I was thinking, I have no idea what to give this, because I mean it's obviously not perfect, so it can't get a 5. But
Right.
it is so much damn fun. Like it's a 5 on the fun scale, right? But there's storylines that are abandoned, there's decisions that don't make any sense, but ultimately it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, right? So I think I'm going with this is so here's the thing. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 5, right?
Okay.
Part 2, do I like this more than part 2? I don't know. And part 2, I would probably give somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5. All right, so I just convinced myself. I'm gonna go 4.5. 4.5 yuppie party bus massacres.
I 100% agree. Just down to the fact that when it ended, like once the my adrenaline had stopped and I had to start thinking about what I was going to rate it, I was like, man, I don't know, right? And I'm talking
Yeah.
to my buddy, fan of the show, Josh Schneider, and and he's immediately like, yeah, the plot was trash. Yeah, sure it was, but like I said, it's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Did they give us a massacre in Texas, mostly done with a chainsaw? Fuck yeah, they did.
Absolutely. It delivered, right?
Yeah. And so, so there's 3 stars right there. It's in Texas. There's a massacre. Most of it's done with a chainsaw. There's your 3. The amazing, like I said, that amazing scene at the very end, that's a star right there for me. Loved it. And so I'm not willing to dock a full star for the storyline mishaps here, because there is some credit to be given for even approaching them, because you're right. I can't think of a time a horror movie has even approached this idea of the trauma of a school shooting survivor, and the amazing acting of the girl who played Lila.
She played it
Elsie Fisher.
Straight. She played it straight and handled it, I think, with a lot of reverence.
Yes,
because I started to feel something when
when she
that happened.
winced. When she winced, even like just seeing the AR-15 on that table, like it was approached, it wasn't handled, but also how much can you handle that in a horror movie without it becoming very ham-fisted, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that very, very thin line between social commentary and, bludgeoning. And so maybe they approach some of these things just enough. Could I have used a little bit more? Yeah. So I'm going to go 1/2 star down for it. But man, this movie, just straight up fun, is the most fun that I've had since Krampus on this show, because it was just, it was like I was just smiling ear to ear, just the whole ass movie, which was even funnier based on the fact that 10-15 minutes in, I had texted you and was like, I don't feel good about this. But once they got to the town and shit got real, I was just beaming, right? Because it was perfect. And like I said, back when we did Legacy, I think that if Toby Hooper could see this, man, I think that he'd be proud of it. And, that's worth a star or 1/2 star right there. So yeah, I'm going 4.5 too. It's fun. Damn, it was fun.
And the odd thing is that a lot of the things that we've talked about as negatives and also positives here are things that were brought up during our episode on Candyman, and yet Candyman did not fare so favorably. You rated it higher than I did,
right?
But I was pretty negative on Candyman, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Candyman aspires to be more than what the original was and do something else. I think that this movie tries to update what made the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre so special, but also keep the DNA of the sequels there. Maybe not necessarily pay homage to them, but understand why people were still interested in this series in the first place, right? Because if you have only one good movie and you're like 9 movies in, I mean, there's something there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not that, the other 8 are going to be shit. There's something there that made them special enough for people to keep going back to them. And I think they got that. They got what makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre special. Like you said, it's in Texas. There's a massacre, and it's mostly done with a chainsaw. That's only part of the DNA, though. It's got to be tongue in cheek. It's got to be social commentary. It's got to be brutal, and it's got to be unapologetically Texan.
Yes. And it absolutely was all of those things. So there you go. You heard it here. We're giving it a 4 out of 5 with quick maths there on the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you've enjoyed this and you're listening, make sure that you check us out on Wednesdays. We go out live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday at 9/8 Central. We just released our calendar for this month. So if you follow us on any social medias at ShiverPod, you can check that calendar. We are going to be back next week. We are going to be celebrating, it's going to be a day late, but hey, we're guys. We're bound to do things a little bit late. We're going to be celebrating International Women's Day. And I believe March is now I believe March is now like Women's Month.
Yeah.
Now, but the official International Women's Day is the 8th. So on March 9th, I'm still stuck in February. On March 9th, we're going to be celebrating all things woman in horror with the movie The Final Girls, which if you're listening to this and you've never heard of or seen The Final Girls, definitely check that out in the next week because you're not going to want to miss us having fun with that one. We'll be doing The Final Girls next month. We want to thank everybody who watches live and chimes in. Frank Kowalski giving us a thumbs up and some fire there. We appreciate you hanging around for the whole episode today, man.
Thank you,
Kowalski. If you like this, make sure you head to shiverpod.com. You can find all of our other stuff. We're on anywhere you can find your podcast, and on a lot of them, including Spotify now, you can give ratings. So if you've enjoyed it, give us a 4 or 5 stars. Move us up in that algorithm a little bit.
Absolutely. Make sure you check out all of the other podcasts that are on the Geek Bro Network. Mount Geekmore, which Daniel and I are a part of. When it's on, we haven't done one in a little while.
Yeah, we've Neary's had a really wild schedule here lately. He's been working a lot, so shout out to him for being on that grind. But yeah, we're working on getting some dates together, I believe. So we'll start coming back once he kind of smooths out when he can and can't.
Yeah, but there's a backlog of episodes for those of you that got some time, and it's a pretty good listen, if I may say so myself.
I like to think so.
Yeah, right. What's Up, Bro? Which is where the other half of our podcast network namesake comes from. Better Let Me Tell You, Seasons, TV podcast, Dose of Ellie, Kick Flicks, Crimacopia, our sister podcast, and
Comedy Fitness. You may have said
Comedy Fitness.
Yeah, there it is. There's
Comedy
the
Fitness. There you
so
go.
if you head to geekbro.net, you can check out all of those. We appreciate hearing from all of you. So even if you're listening afterwards, you can always reach out to us on social media. If you're really into this and you're familiar with us, the format of the show, hell, reach out to us. We occasionally do 3 or 4 people on one of these. We're always looking for some more people to chime in on us. We do just ask that you have a good internet connection as we do stream out live. So make sure you reach out to us on all of those. I believe that's it. I think we've wrapped up everything here nicely. We got a nice little nice big Texas-sized bow on this one. So from all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.